After a stint in the DCEU and a break, Zack Snyder is back. His latest, Rebel Moon, is headed to Netflix, and Snyder is literally the perfect director for it, which is exactly what today's video is about. But first, I should tell you what Rebel Moon is actually about. This is going to be a two-part sci-fi epic. It's a completely original story, but Snyder and the gang do note that Star Wars and, interestingly, Akira Kurosawa as their influences.
Superman stands on the Batmobile, right?
Yeah.
And, they had finished it. They're like, oh my gosh, look, it's an amazing, look, Zach, here it is. And I was like, wow, it looks great. Looks like a real car. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, it'll be cool when Superman stands on it. And they're like, no one can stand on it.
Kurosawa is, of course, the legend that every samurai movie is trying to live up to. According to the official synopsis, it centers on a peaceful colony at the edge of the galaxy. The colony won't be peaceful for long, though, as the tyrant Belisarius is threatening to attack it. The people of the colony, in their desperation, ask the mysterious Korra to help. They task her with seeking out warriors from the nearby planets to build an army to face Belisarius's forces. Pretty classic samurai plot right there. I wonder if Korra will recruit a tubular 7 warriors from her home colony. Now, the movie is rocking a pretty eclectic cast. Korra herself will be played by genre actress Sofia Boutella.
Except for loving her, which was not that hard, but yeah.
What would you put Charlize in your list of people you've kissed in your life? Like if you had to give her a number.
A number like rating her?
Of the people you kissed in life, like the 4th best kiss I've had.
Joining her will be Jaimin Hansu, Ed Skrein, Ray Fisher, Charlie Hunnam, Corey Stoll, and even Anthony Hopkins. Snyder has filmed both parts of this story back to back, so you won't have to wait too long for part 2.
There's a great YouTube video that shows all the kills in the Christopher Nolan movies, even though we would perceive them as movies where he doesn't kill anyone. I think there's like 42 potential kills that the Batman does.
As for part 1, Rebel Moon will be dropping on Netflix on the 22nd of December, 2023. So, maybe resist the urge to cancel your subscription for one more year? Of course, I realize as exciting as this movie is, it might have a deal breaker: Zack Snyder.
This idea that this warrior for love will set the world right, and not through what we would consider the normal sort of aggressive male, I'm gonna fight for it. Though if challenged, of course she will,
A lot of fans are skeptical about the director, and I'm not unsympathetic to that skepticism. Most people will agree that Justice League being a bad movie wasn't Snyder's fault. If anything, he used his chance to redo the movie as a way to redeem himself. But the 2 movies he made before that were, of course, Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. The latter was considered to be a big misfire of a flick that misunderstood that hunky Boy Scout at its heart. The former, meanwhile, used to be considered the worst superhero movie of all time, until Suicide Squad managed to outdo it. While that may be the popular opinion, you should remember that the Snyderverse has a very vocal fanbase all on its own. That fanbase managed to get Warner Brothers to greenlight a longer cut of one of their movies, one that included new footage. Also, he recently made Army of the Dead, which was pretty good.
We talked about it. Other than that, we had taken some time to do the TIG reshoots and stuff. So I just feel like also the tone of the movie, I think, and its point is social commentary. It just happens to...
I'm not suggesting that Zack Snyder is the greatest director to ever sit in chair. What I am saying is that this movie, with this director, is one that you need to pay attention to. first off, his most famous movie blended historical themes with style. I am naturally referring to 300.
Look, it's funny because we kind of, you live with the thing, and it's like every waking moment, it's all about 300. Then the movie comes out. Then we were working on Watchmen, and then now suddenly it's like, wait.
As controversial as Snyder has become, most action movie fans will agree that 300 was a super entertaining movie. Based on Frank Miller's comic of the same name, 300 was basically Snyder's audition for the world of superhero movies. It turned the historic Battle of Thermopylae into a sword and sandal version of the climax from Endgame, and it cast the Spartan unit as the Avengers of sorts. Now, Rebel Moon isn't about superheroes, and it isn't about history, but the mentions of Star Wars and Kurosawa tell you what sort of movie it's going to be. There will be bloodshed in this movie, make no mistake. mistake. And if you can trust Zack Snyder with nothing else, you can trust him to pull that sort of thing off brilliantly. He'll also do a fantastic job of paying homage to the samurai influences, even within the sci-fi context of the movie. Now, that isn't to say that this will be a dumb action movie at all, because Snyder is more than capable of handling brainier material, and if you need proof of that, you need to carve out 3.5 hours of your day to sit down with the ultimate cut of Watchmen. That movie wasn't a perfect adaptation, and there are loads of video essays on this very site that'll tell you why. I'd say that the fact that a movie can stand up to that kind of analysis is proof enough that it is interesting if nothing else. Sure, there are places where you could argue Snyder went off the track in interpreting Watchmen's themes, but overall, the movie does a pretty good job of wrapping the very complex themes of Alan Moore's magnum opus in an entertaining package.
I'm about 6 pages from the end of my gigantic novel, Jerusalem, which is bigger than the Bible and is going to probably be just short of the complete works of Shakespeare.
The average person would probably find Watchmen the comic kinda boring. On the other hand, the average person would love Watchmen, though they definitely complain about the length. In the process of watching the movie, they'd even learn something about superhero tropes and stories. Don't forget that in adapting Watchmen to the screen, he managed to do something many filmmakers failed to do. Some of those guys are typically considered to be better than Zack, so don't assume that Rebel Moon will be an empty spectacle because of the director's reputation. When he wants to get thinky, he gets thinky. That being said, some insanity is definitely on the table. Like, let's not forget that Snyder likes to push the limits of movie imagination. I mean, the guy's first movie was Dawn of the Dead, which pushed the zombie movie genre to some extreme limits. Like, I don't want to spend too much time thinking about the zombie baby. His spiritual follow-up to Dawn of the Dead was the movie we talked about before, Army of the Dead. That movie was supposed to come out right after Dawn, but it got stuck in development hell and Snyder got involved in other things. It was basically a heist movie, kind of like Ocean's 11, but during the zombie apocalypse. What other director would come up with a concept like that? Honestly, if you shut off this video to fire this thing up on Netflix, I wouldn't even blame you. And how can we forget about Sucker Punch? That was an insane action movie about a group of girls trying to escape an old-timey evil mental institution. And they do it by escaping into a series of fantasy delusions. Yeah, that movie has a 22% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but you gotta respect the mind that dreamt it up. And even recently, we've seen that his imagination is still just as crazy. Like, have you seen the stuff he came up with for the Snyderverse? As much as Warner was rushing him into creating Justice League as a competition for Avengers, Snyder had some genuinely interesting ideas. His original concept for the Justice League movie was a two-parter. In part 1, Steppenwolf might have been the one to resurrect Superman. Clark would don his infamous black suit and side with the Apocalypse crew. Darkseid would also wreck the Earth with a mother box and brainwash the survivors with the anti-life equation. That would turn the world into the nightmare version of the future Batman saw in Dawn of Justice. Part 2 would then see the remnants of the Justice League trying to get Supes back on their side. Fan theories suggest that Batman and Wonder Woman would die in the process. At that point, the Flash would travel back in time to warn Bruce about the coming events, which we also saw in Dawn of Justice. How insane is that? No one would accuse DC of trying to copy the MCU if this is what they ended up going with. You know, I don't think Snyder is built for franchises. Solo movies that come completely from his own brain are where he shines. And I hope that I've convinced you of that with this video. See ya!